So with your pieces here, how important is the concept of persona?
Very important. They actually started out to be from stories of women in the Bible, and I was kind of taken that I call this series the Travelers series, with the subtitle being Inadvertent Reluctant Pilgrims, how women's internal pain changes the outer world. And what I find is in women's process, often they'll have a personal problem that they'll be in deep pain over, and in order to do something about it, they end up doing something that actually changes things in a huge way in the outside world. And it veered away from that because that became so very literal. And I got more into materials and color and shapes and textures. But even though I don't have a story for each one, there is a very deep connection to what goes on for women, what happens, what could happen, what didn't happen. And all of that is reflected in the detail in the bodies, while the ones who are finished have very sensitive faces, where the face, if you look at it, every time you look at it, it's a little bit different, and there will be a layering of emotions that will unfold as you spend time or keep looking at the piece.
I noticed that you have symbolic references. You have some music in some, and how does that come into play?
Are you talking about this one?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the Earth altar, and the blocks say "My Earth RX," prescription for healing soon. And the forehead seemed just a little large, and I was playing with different ways to, what happens with her hair, but she didn't have hair. And I actually first put music that my boyfriend wrote, and then that relationship, for some reason I took it off, and it's actually Chopin from a piece that Chopin waltz from my childhood. And then the relationship didn't go well, so I was really relieved that Chopin was on her forehead. This is like an earth goddess. I call this series my altars. And, there's other one. And I call this series my altars. And this was one of the first ways I started to use, the ladies came first. And then I had the structural problem, so I thought if I take the face and put it on a solid background, I build these, then it would work structurally, which it did. And then I felt a little bit limited by, this is a very, very unfinished one, but I felt very limited by the altar kind of idea. And so I started to go to the Travelers, where I had the heads, and then I would build the back with wood. And what I started to discover was that I loved building with wood also. This is also wood. It's a leftover piece from my porch. And this is considered painting, but it's not. These are all drawn with archival pencils and glued and glazed and collaged, and even the faces actually drawn. And then it began to intrigue me to go into more shapes. These are at a very unfinished state, but they're different, three-dimensional. They're cubes and tiles. These are frames. These are the cubes again. These are drawn and then glued on. This was pieces of an old painting. This actually was balsa wood inlay, which I did at one point, and then my finger got so sore from cutting. That was the end of that. And I've actually been working with the saw that I'm going to start to cut my own shapes out of wood. These are boxes, and people have started to give me pieces of things. And then, I got into creating these shapes and got very intrigued. And then I got a little bit feeling everything was in a box. And so I remembered that I had, with the early days of paper mache, I had made round shapes with balloons. So I actually made a balloon, and this is about 20 layers. And then I connected it to the wood, which I cut out. And then this is the head. Now I make these are again layers. And this is an effect which I used here and here, where I kept the transparency by using the paper mache with all of the newspaper, and then using a glaze that had a pinch of opacity. And each layer is a hair more opaque, and if you do 10 layers, you can almost but not quite see the newspaper. And then when you draw over it, you get a beautiful translucency, so the expression goes in and in and in and is reflective.
Oh, that's great. You're also a colorist.
I am, and I have to say that in the Hudson Valley, this is looked down on. Every place else, people talk about my colors, your colors. And I think it comes from strength of feeling, from old anger, from passion, from someone said to me, you always go for the high notes. It's wanting to find that fine, hot place that brings people alive. And to me, color does that. And I will go from one set of colors to the other. I'll go from very, very, very fierce bright to very pastel. I have some pieces that are all very, 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 very dark. But the process of color and how colors juxtapose with each other, how they reflect, how they interplay. I also do another big no-no. One of my professors, I think at Silvermine, said you should never use purple. Never use purple. So there's always a lot of purple in my work.
That wouldn't have been Carlos, would it?
So, was it? Did he say that?
Well, he told someone never to use a white glaze, and they came over to my studio and saw something that they thought was wonderful that was built out of white glazes.
White glaze.
Well,
Should
This is wonderful.